You know, when you're just scrolling, maybe Instagram, maybe TikTok, and you see these images,
Hmm.
something slick, colorful, definitely not a cigarette, right? These little devices,
Yeah.
and someone's maybe blowing these perfect smoke rings, or it's just like sitting on a table and some cool cafe shot looks like another accessory.
Right. Just part of the scene.
Exactly. It feels less like actual smoking and more, I don't know, just part of a lifestyle. And once you notice it, you kind of start seeing it everywhere.
And that feeling you just described is simply part of the scene. Well, that's not accidental. That's actually the sophisticated strategy
Hmm.
playing out right in front of us. It's not just some random trend. It's a deliberate campaign.
Okay. So let's dig into this. We've really gone deep into the material we gathered. We looked at reports, heard from experts, crunched some data, and what became just crystal clear is that the story of vaping, well, it isn't simple at all.
Not at all.
It's really about how it's being marketed, who they're targeting, and the stakes involved, which are frankly very high. We drew a lot from this recent gathering of experts we explored. So our mission today in this deep dive is basically to pull back the curtain on these tactics.
Yeah, and what we saw is that while we'll definitely get into specifics from, say, India, focusing on a really important event, this is absolutely a global story. The playbook, the tactics being used, they have implications for you wherever you're listening,
Yeah.
and especially for young people everywhere.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of them. Imagine this. It's the eve of World No Tobacco Day, May 31st, 2025.
Right.
And we're not talking about some anonymous conference hall. This is the India International Center in New Delhi, a place, known for serious discussion.
A respected venue.
And that night, the feeling, the atmosphere, it was just charged with this sense of urgency. You had experts, government officials, and really importantly, concerned parents all gathered together. They were there to tackle what felt like, well, like a modern crisis unfolding right under our noses.
Exactly. And the seminar title itself, Unmasking the Appeal, Exposing Industry Tactics on Tobacco and Nicotine Products, really says it all, doesn't it?
It really does.
It was co-organized by this group with a very personal stake, Mothers Against Vaping, or MAV. And the atmosphere, as you said, it was one of shared alarm, people realizing just how deeply this whole thing had infiltrated communities.
And you really get that alarm when you look at the background, the landscape these tactics are entering. I mean, in India, the sheer scale of tobacco use is just huge. It affects something like 28.6% of the population.
Wow, that's massive.
It is. But the number that really hits hard is that 8.5% of tobacco users are teenagers, kids aged 13 to 15. We're talking millions of young people already vulnerable.
And that existing vulnerability, that's what makes the arrival of vaping so disturbing. We found that even a year ago, almost 4% of 15 to 24-year-olds were already aware of e-cigarettes.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. The really critical detail is how they found out. A staggering 66.6% learned about them through social media.
66% just from social media. That number just, wow, it jumps right out.
It really does.
And when we dug into that social media awareness piece, Instagram is leading the pack at 46%, Facebook's right behind at nearly 24%. It honestly feels like the Wild West for nicotine marketing online.
Absolutely.
Laws that were maybe designed for billboards or TV ads, like India's PECA 2019, which specifically banned e-cigarettes, they just seem to be struggling, like desperately trying to keep up.
Yeah, the law might be clear on paper, but enforcing it in this super fast-moving, constantly changing digital space, that's the enormous challenge right there.
So, okay, why is it working? Why are young people being drawn in? Because it's clearly not being sold like the smoking their parents or grandparents knew.
Absolutely not. And this is where that sophisticated strategy really kicks in. Vaping is marketed quite deliberately as an essential accessory, an aesthetic statement, something cool,
Yeah.
trendy. It gets linked to influencers, to lifestyle, to visual spectacle. Those perfect smoke rings you mentioned, using the device in really cool locations. It's a complete break from the image of traditional smoking, which is, let's face it, increasingly stigmatized.
Yeah, totally. You don't see influencers posting these like artful shots of themselves with a crumpled cigarette pack, do you?
Not really, no.
It's all about the sleek vape design, the colors, the curated aesthetic, and this focus on lifestyle, that seems to be a key part of their playbook for getting around the rules.
Exactly. I mean, despite very strict laws like PICA 2019 that ban e-cigarettes, these products are still surprisingly easy to find online.
How? How are they still available if they're banned?
Well, we saw they're being sold online, even on platforms like Shopify,
Huh.
and using payment systems like Razorpay.
But how do they get away with that if the product itself is illegal?
Well, it's through deliberate camouflage and exploiting loopholes. Products get listed using coded language, things like aroma sticks or flavor drops.
Rooms.
Yeah, trying to hide what they really are from, automated filters and maybe even regulators who are scanning listings. And then the absolutely central piece is the role of influencers.
Right.
They make vaping look desirable, normal, cool. They essentially act as these unregulated marketing channels that traditional advertising bans just can't touch.
So the social media ecosystem, it's not just where kids first hear about it. It's basically become the industry's main playground.
Absolutely.
We saw some striking numbers about just the sheer volume of this content.
We did. One analysis showed, hundreds of thousands of posts promoting tobacco on social networks, but the massive majority were specifically focusing on vapes.
Wow.
Just look at the hashtags. Hashtag vape had hundreds of millions of posts, while hashtag smoke was way, way behind. That's not random. That's a clear signal of where the marketing energy is going.
And the content itself. It's influencers, it's celebrities. We saw that a noticeable percentage of posts actually feature celebrities.
Yeah.
Those smoke tricks, or just showing people casually using vapes in these really appealing aspirational settings, like on vacation or at a party.
And what was really striking was the almost complete lack of any meaningful health warnings. Or, when they do show up, they're often so weak they're laughable, or sometimes they're even twisted to sound edgy. It completely undermines any public health message.
Right. And this isn't just happening in India, is it? When we looked globally, we saw the exact same tactics popping up elsewhere, especially in English-speaking countries.
Yes, the pattern is just undeniable. This kind of social media advertising, often with celebrity endorsements, it's fueling youth vaping all over the world. In the U.S., for example, the National Youth Tobacco Survey from last year still found over 1.6 million middle and high school students using e-cigarettes.
Still that many.
Yeah, and just like the pattern we saw emerging from the India data, the overwhelming majority, over 87%, were using flavored vapes. Fruit, candy, ice flavors, those are the favorites.
Fruit and candy.
Right. And the top brands you see are things like Elf Bar, Breeze, JUL. It just confirms that flavors and this appealing packaging are absolutely central to hooking young people.
And it's not just the U.S., right? You mentioned other places.
No, definitely not. Countries like the UK, Australia, they're grappling with the exact same challenges, facing this identical, sophisticated industry playbook.
Okay, so given this huge marketing push and how appealing it looks, the big question that always comes up is, isn't vaping supposed to be safer? Isn't that the whole point?
Right, and this is where we have to be absolutely clear based on the facts we have. Vaping aerosol is not harmless water vapor. That's a myth.
Okay.
It's actually a mixture of nicotine, flavorings, and various chemicals that are heated up and then inhaled deep into your lungs. Yes, it's different from the thousands of toxic chemicals in traditional cigarette smoke, but let's be clear. You're still inhaling a chemical cocktail.
A chemical cocktail, not water vapor. Got it.
And here's something that really stood out, kind of surprising. Vaping can actually deliver more nicotine than traditional cigarettes in some cases.
More? How?
Well, because some devices use extra strength nicotine cartridges, or they allow users to crank up the voltage, which gives a bigger, faster hit of nicotine.
So it's not really an upgrade in terms of harm reduction. It's just a different, maybe even more intense way to get hooked on nicotine.
That's a good way to put it. Exactly. And, while the industry often positions vapes as tools to help smokers quit.
Right, the cessation argument.
Yeah. The evidence we looked at actually shows that many people who try to quit cigarettes using e-cigarettes just end up using both products, dual use.
Oh, wow. So they're not quitting, they're just adding another habit.
Pretty much, which dramatically increases their overall exposure to harmful chemicals and nicotine.
And then there's maybe the most alarming part, what experts are calling the on-ramp effect.
Yes, this is crucial. Kids who would likely never have even considered picking up a traditional cigarette are starting with vapes.
Yeah.
Why? Because they look harmless, they taste like candy or fruit, and they seem cool and socially acceptable thanks to all that marketing.
So it becomes their first step into nicotine addiction.
That's the profound danger here. As one expert we looked at put it, vaping is acting less like an off-ramp for adult smokers to quit tobacco and much more like a direct on-ramp for teenagers into nicotine addiction.
And once they're hooked on nicotine via vaping,
The risk of them eventually transitioning to traditional deadly tobacco products goes way up, which could potentially wipe out decades of hard-won public health progress in reducing smoking rates.
And we can't just talk hypotheticals. We've already seen real health crises emerge, haven't we?
Absolutely. The Ebola outbreak in the U.S. back in 2019, that lung injury crisis,
I remember that.
it led to thousands of hospitalizations and, tragically, dozens of deaths. It was just this stark, terrifying warning about what these aerosols can do to lungs, even in the short term.
And didn't one of the officials in New Delhi mention something even darker?
Yes, Special Commissioner Jaspal saying she had a really chilling observation from what law enforcement is seeing on the ground. These vape devices are increasingly being used as a way to consume hard drugs.
Wow. So hiding drug use inside a vape.
That's the concern. It adds this entirely new, incredibly dangerous dimension that goes way beyond just nicotine addiction. And critically, the simple, undeniable fact remains. The long-term health effects of inhaling these vape aerosols, they're still completely unknown.
Right.
These products just haven't been around long enough for us to understand what happens after decades of use.
You know, hearing about this whole strategy, bypassing rules, using influencers, creating this cool image, feels disturbingly familiar, like we've seen this movie before.
Oh, yeah, because basically we have. This is Big Tobacco's historical playbook, just updated for the digital age.
How so?
It's actually fascinating how they adapted in the past. Remember when the U.S. banned cigarette ads on radio and TV back in the 1970s?
Yeah.
They didn't just stop marketing, did they? They found workarounds, sponsorships, product placement in movies, things like that. Now, they're just swapping out traditional media for the digital space. Social media feeds and influencer marketing are the new frontier.
It feels like watching a really slick, highly produced, and incredibly dangerous sequel.
Unfortunately, yes. And this time, the primary target audience seems to be Gen Z. The World Health Organization has been incredibly blunt about this.
What do they say?
They pointed specifically to the tobacco industry's strategy of targeting kids with this unbelievable range of flavors. We saw figures mentioning over 16,000 different flavors.
16,000.
Yeah. Plus colorful branding. And they're even looking at marketing in new spaces like the metaverse.
Wait, the metaverse. So you can get addicted to nicotine in virtual reality now, too.
Apparently that's part of the plan.
Yeah.
The WHO, they didn't mince words at all. They called it a deliberate strategy to replace tobacco users lost to death and disease with a fresh wave of users trapped in addiction.
That sounds less like a business model and more like, I don't know, a public health supervillain plot.
It really does frame it starkly, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, okay, with a problem this widespread and tactics this sophisticated, what's actually being done? What did our research show about the efforts to fight back?
Well, in India, there are definitely concrete steps being taken. We heard about government initiatives like school awareness programs and training for teachers to help educate them.
Okay, education's key.
Definitely. They're even exploring working with influencers, kind of turning the tables to promote anti-vaping messages using the industry's own tools against them, basically. The Ministry of Health is actively pushing for what they're calling a vape literacy mission, trying to replicate past successful public health campaigns to really hammer home that vaping is illegal in India and it's harmful.
And I heard something about whistleblowers, incentivizing people to report illegal sales.
Yes, exactly. Offering incentives for people to report illegal trade. And from the law enforcement side, Special Commissioner Jaspal Singh really stressed the absolutely critical need for better coordination.
Between who?
Between police, customs, and even courier services. They need to work seamlessly together to actually intercept and stop the flow of these illegal products, because right now, too much is slipping through the cracks.
And the Mothers Against Vaping group, MAV, they had specific recommendations in their report too, right?
They did. They called for much stricter enforcement of the existing laws.
Yeah.
Like PECA 2019. They want real legal action against offenders. And critically, they're demanding that social media platforms take responsibility.
What does that mean, responsibility?
It means swift and effective takedown orders for any content promoting illegal vape sales or use. They're urging platforms like Instagram to actually be held accountable for hosting this kind of marketing. They can't just turn a blind eye.
And globally, are we seeing similar battles?
Yeah, similar fights are playing out everywhere with sort of mixed results. The US FDA has taken some enforcement actions against major brands. The UK is talking about banning disposable vapes and tightening marketing rules, but they also face huge challenges with social media marketing. Australia, which has famously strict tobacco control laws, is also grappling with influencers promoting vapes.
So it's a tough fight everywhere.
It really is. There's even been talk in places like Australia and Canada about trying to fund campaigns using influencers for good, to counter the pro-vaping messages. But it's an incredibly tough landscape when you're up against an industry that has, well, truly bottomless pockets for marketing.
Okay, so pulling everything together from this deep dive, what are the absolute most crucial actions needed based on everything we looked at?
Okay, first, I'd say unwavering, strict enforcement of the existing laws, like the ban in India. That requires real cross-agency collaboration, police, customs, cybercrime units all working together.
Right, closing the loopholes.
Exactly. Second, social media platforms have to do more than just issue vague statements. They need to implement swift, effective systems to identify and take down content promoting illegal or harmful products. They just can't claim ignorance anymore.
And education seems absolutely fundamental throughout all this.
It is. Widespread education in schools, equipping parents with the actual facts and language to talk to their teens about the risks, and importantly, the deceptive marketing tactics. We need media literacy around this. Okay. And finally, maybe we need to explore more innovative measures. Like, Nigeria has this rule requiring health warnings on films that depict tobacco use. Imagine adapting that concept for social media, like a graphic health warning popping up automatically on an Instagram reel that's clearly promoting vapes.
That would definitely disrupt the cool aesthetic they're trying so hard to build.
Precisely. Hit them where it hurts the image.
And at the end of the day, connecting all of this back to the deeper why, it's about the human cost, isn't it?
That's really the core of it. The statistics are just sobering. Tobacco kills one person every 6 seconds around the world.
Every 6 seconds.
Yeah. In India alone, it's responsible for 1.3 million deaths every single year. And vaping, with its candy flavors, its sleek designs, its relentless social media push, it's quite clearly Big Tobacco's latest and maybe most insidious tactic to keep those devastating numbers high. How? By creating a whole new, fresh generation of nicotine addicts.
So this industry isn't targeting young people just because they like bright colors or cool tech. They see them as, well, as future long-term revenue streams, often for life.
It really boils down to protecting young people from an industry that fundamentally views them through the lens of future profit, not as individuals whose health and potential future need safeguarding.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive, what we've really uncovered paints a pretty clear picture. Vaping isn't just some harmless organic trend. It's not just a simple choice. It is absolutely a meticulously designed and marketed product engineered to hook young people. It uses incredibly sophisticated tactics that deliberately bypass regulations and leverage the immense power of social media to create this pervasive sense of desirability, of coolness.
And understanding those tactics, really seeing the strategy behind that cool facade, is just so vital. Whether you're a young person navigating these social feeds, or you're a parent, an educator, or just someone concerned about public health, the appeal starts to fade. It gets unmasked once you see the manipulative strategy that's actually fueling it.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to consider. If powerful industries can so effectively use these psychological tactics, if they can leverage regulatory loopholes and weaponize platforms like social media to market potentially harmful products specifically to the most vulnerable populations, where else might you be seeing similar playbooks at work?
Good question.
Maybe in your own life or just in the wider world around you. What does this whole deep dive into vaping really reveal about the fundamental challenges we face in protecting public health, in safeguarding young people, especially in this digital age? What responsibility truly falls on the shoulders of the platforms hosting this content, on the regulators meant to protect us? And ultimately, what responsibility falls on us as consumers, as parents, as active citizens in society? How can we all become more aware, more critical, and maybe more capable of identifying and pushing back against these really sophisticated influence campaigns? Campaigns specifically designed to shape our choices and behavior, especially when the future of the next generation is literally on the line.